Welcome and thank you for joining Industry Insights, brought to you by Prosumer Connect. My name is Sean Marshall, Director and Founder of Prosumer Connect. We welcome back Richard Green, which is becoming a regular on our shows. Thank you, Richard, for joining us once again.
It's a pleasure, Sean. Look forward to the chat.
Fantastic. Today we're touching what might be perceived as a prickly subject, and you've certainly been very vocal in print pertaining to the Vehicle Salvage Database. So if I may start by asking you exactly, just give our prosumers a bit of an indication as to what is the Vehicle Salvage Database, what do you want to achieve from it, and what are you asking the industry to supply you with?
Certainly, Sean. Quite simply, let's start with data, available data. In this new world of ours, data should be made available to consumers if it is available. Number one is our principle. In this case, we consider this information to be critical to the extent that it can, if made available, ensure that a consumer does not make a very, very substantial mistake in the purchase of a second-hand vehicle. So all we're asking the South African Insurance Association to do is to create an open website, where they place the VIN number, the vehicle identification number, that you will find present on any license plate on any vehicle, to members of the public for vehicles that have been written off. Now, for members of the public, written off in the insurer world is also called uneconomical to repair. So our view is that if it is uneconomical to repair and an insurer writes it off, how does it suddenly become economical to repair? Because if you consider insurance, as you well know, is there to put you back in the position you were prior to the incident. And it would only be responsible of an insurer if they write off a vehicle to destroy the vehicle, in my view. Use it if it can be used to harvest parts that are, in fact, in these cases, mostly genuine. Harvest them, use them in the insurance process thereafter, or the repair process thereafter, but don't allow that vehicle to exit the salvage yard, which it does, from our perspective, in two ways. It is bought as a wreck when it is really poorly or severely damaged, just to get the identity of the vehicle by thieves. And I know that's a strong statement, but this is truth. We know it to be true. And they use the identity of that vehicle to re-register a stolen vehicle on the system. Unfortunately, it is an area of our country that is fraught with fraud. Or it is bought by somebody who intends to repair that vehicle and sell it back into the system via the used car network. And as you all know, it's very digital nowadays. So they take that car into a motor body repair shop that they often have themselves or own themselves. They then repair it very, very poorly. And they put fancy panels on the outside of a vehicle, and then they sell it to unsuspecting consumers. Now, all we're saying is if that consumer had the ability to check the VIN number and was told via that system that the vehicle had been previously written off, they would be able to make a more informed choice. They might still choose to buy the vehicle. It could be a guy who feels that he is confident enough with his technical skills to repair it himself. It could be, any manner of people. If they want to make that, that's fine. But if it's intended to be repaired and resold, that's a very dangerous or a slippery slope.
So, Richard, the industry would argue, if I just look at their point of view for a second, firstly, only 35% of vehicles on our roads are insured, so that's controlled by insurance companies. So we're already talking about a minority of this problem that we're perceiving from write-offs and wrecks and those kind of things. So insurance industry commenced this database to curb fraud and to share information amongst the insurance companies. And by right, they might have ownership of this data because it's their own data that they freely share with themselves, and it's only within that close-knit community for their own purposes of combating fraud. Having said that, when you make that request, it's only on behalf of the insurance company, which is 35% of the market. Is that going to really alleviate the problem? And what about the rest of the industry players? And I have to bring in our finance houses, our banks, that also make use of salvaging vehicles, and that's also potentially part of the same problem. How are we then going to deal with that? How do we justify that we want this access to this database that exists, but we're not going to be actually dealing with the majority of the problem?
Well, two sides to my answer to that. One, I think in the banking sector, we're not dealing with severely damaged vehicles in the main. These are vehicles that have been taken back from errant payers and various other things. I think a very small percentage of those vehicles are severely damaged to the extent that they are considered uneconomical to repair. So I think the majority of the problem lies on the other side of the fence with short-term motor insurers. I acknowledge it's only 35% of the market, but one has to start somewhere. At the moment, we have a full-time investigator at the moment looking at the examples that are coming to our attention. Okay. And we also carte blanche looking at flighting this as a program, because it's absolutely disgusting, really, what we see when we take these cars apart. And the irony of it is that they come to our members after being reinsured. So they go to the salvage yard, they are repaired very poorly, the pretty painted panels are put on, they are sold to an unsuspecting consumer who insures the vehicle. So it's really just, I think, in everybody's interests to make whatever is available via SAIA available to the members of the public. Why would we hold back information that could potentially save you and I and other consumers the trouble? Because it's massive trouble, Sean. What happens is you buy that car, you buy it for, let's say, between trade and retail. The moment you take possession of that vehicle and you've paid for it, you can bet your bottom dollar that it's worth half of what you paid for it, number one. Number two, what we find is that people take it back because they buy in warranty vehicles that are still, the vehicles that are still in warranty that this has happened to. They go back to a dealership. The dealership takes one look at the vehicle and says, terribly sorry, we're not honoring this warranty because it's been repaired like the back end of a bus. So the implications of purchasing one of these vehicles is severe.
Okay. Richard, and from my point of view, I just have to ask you this question. This problem you're referring is repaired by MBRs and those kind of things. How much of this problem, if I can ask you, is potentially involving some of your members? Because if this is a trade, then are you actually looking in-house as well to make sure that your own member companies aren't involved in these kind of trades?
I'll answer that very quickly. When I engaged with Vivian Pearson originally on this issue, she posed that question. And I said to her, if any SAMBRA member can be found guilty of repairing vehicles that they have bought at a salvage yard in the poor state that we find them, we no longer want them as a SAMBRA member. We will remove them from our membership immediately, because it's criminal, to take a vehicle like that, repair it in a substandard fashion. And I'm not talking about, a poor color or a slight misalignment of the chassis so that the left front wheel wears poorly. I'm talking about welding that is like grandma's knitting, to the extent that chassis will implode in a severe accident. We talk about that. That's what we find out there. Because obviously the guy purchases the vehicle on the salvage yard at quite a high value, and then has to repair it very cheaply to get it out the door. So we're talking about very severe damage or very severe poor repair methodology being applied. Generally, SAMBRA members are not going to do that. But if there is one or two out there that are, beware. We will make sure that you no longer are a member. Simple as that.
So, Richard, I have a sense that we're going to still unpack this topic in some more episodes to come and into deeper conversations, because I do think, we've literally scratched the surface today. Let me just make sure that I understand what you are saying right now. It's not a question of stop salvaging vehicles. It's right now the request is make those vehicles that were salvaged, the data available, so that the consumer that buys that vehicle after it's been repaired is aware of the fact that this vehicle was written off and subsequently repaired. Am I understanding correctly or not?
Exactly that. Exactly that. That's all we're asking for, nothing else. And we're happy to be part of any process to allow that to be achieved. That's all we're asking for. Your summary is exactly correct.
Okay. And then I have to ask you a last question. I know we're running out of time and I'm getting signals here behind the camera. But I have to ask you, what's in it for SAMBRA? So why are you pushing this topic, and why are you so passionate about it? Because I appreciate consumer safety and all those kind of things, I do. But why is SAMBRA so passionate about this topic?
What's in it for SAMBRA and its members is that if the write-off percentage used by insurers returns to where it was 10 to 15 years ago, which was around about 70%, that means that quantum of vehicles comes back into the repair chain. So it's an imperative for our membership to have more business going through. It obviously is economically advantageous to all of the people that supply parts, supply paint, the employees in the business. So from our perspective, it's about economic growth within our sector, or just gaining back what we have lost over the last 5 to 10 years.
Fantastic. Richard, again, we're going to have to leave it there, but like I said previously, I have a sneaky suspicion we're going to have a follow-up discussion pertaining to this, and maybe potentially getting, a panel together so that we can really sit and hash this thing out from the various industry players. But again, Richard, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for always availing yourself for these kind of chats. We really appreciate it, and I'm confident we'll see you soon.
Terrific, Sean. Look forward to that.
Thank you very much.
Ciao.
Cheers.